Welcome back to the Clerc podcast show. We are back in the lovely Bark Center of Wyndham. Last week we were down by the river talking about Bigfoot by a fire. It was a great experience. Tylan wasn't there. He was at state golf. How'd that go over for you?
Not too well, but it's a very fun time.
It was a fun time. And where were you guys at? Chanhassen?
No, Becker.
Becker?
Right outside of Becker. Yeah.
Right outside of Becker. I thought it was in Chanhassen for some reason.
Nope.
Fourth state appearance, is that right?
Yes, fourth. Yep.
Fourth state appearance. Well, let's give Tylan a golf clap for that. Great to have you back on here after that state golf appearance. So it's good to have you on here. And I don't know exactly what you are, Kyle, at this point. You keep coming back. We must like you enough to get you back on here.
That's right.
Kyle Antes, everybody.
Good to be back. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming back. I was about to say thanks for having me. And our guest of the night, Jayesun Sherman. Thank you for coming on. It's great to have you.
Yeah,
and I know that you are going to be gone later this week, so we had to fit you in early because you're going to see President Trump.
Yes, sir.
You want to talk a little bit, before we get into anything, you just want to talk a little bit about that and kind of what's going on. Why is he even coming to Minnesota?
Sure. The state of Minnesota has 8 congressional districts, and 7, 8, and 1 are the premier ones pretty much in the country. And so he's coming there to bolster support for the GOP and to get everyone excited so that they get out and vote, right? So, yes, I'll hopefully get a chance to actually meet the man tomorrow night.
Well, that'd be cool. And that's in Duluth, right?
Yes, Duluth.
Wow. So you're making the trip. That's tomorrow night or Thursday night?
Tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night. So I don't know if that'll be broadcast anywhere or anything. I know they usually do that on YouTube or something. Is it going to be on TV as well?
Oh, yes.
Sweet.
Oh, yes.
Well, maybe we'll see you on TV shaking Trump's hand.
In the
background waving or
Yes.
something. Or he might even pull you up there and get a live interview going or something.
He might.
Hey, tell him to come down, get on the podcast.
Yes, I will if I have a chance.
That'd be sweet. Well, everybody watching, if you could just like, comment, share, subscribe. We will be giving away a free item. I'm not sure exactly what it will be next week. So just make sure you like, comment, share, subscribe. Tell all your friends about the podcast. We're just trying to get people on here like Sherman or like any of the other guests just to tell their stories, kind of tell people what they're up to, and to kind of get input on important issues or just random things that we're talking about. So thanks, everyone, for tuning in, and let's get on with the show here. This week, we are going to be talking about a lot of random stuff. We're going to be talking about the ancient civilization, some technology. We're going to be talking about Action Park, which I know Sharon doesn't know anything about, but I'd like to get your opinion on that. And we're going to be talking about a lot of other stuff too. But before we do that, we need to first start, Kyle, by watching the video on Action Park.
Okay.
Are you ready for this?
I'm ready. I've been waiting all day for this.
I don't think he is.
Kyle's been waiting all day. A little, before we get into this video, I just want to give a little background of what it is. I found this on YouTube, I think yesterday or something, because there's a movie trailer that came out, and it's with the guy from Jackass. I can't think of his name. Johnny Knoxville. You know what I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
He's making a new movie, and it's called, I can't think of the name, Action Point or something. And it's actually based on a real true life story. It's about this guy who makes his own amusement park, and it's so dangerous that people die at it.
Jeez.
And this happened in real life.
Before we do we want to give a little background on Sherman just so people know who he is?
Oh, yeah, true. We probably should. Jump
Sherman,
right
everybody
into
knows.
Yeah,
Maybe Sherman
Maybe
just...
I'm
that is
one.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
He's
did
a
kind of
celebrity.
jump right in. My bad. Let's, Sherman, why don't you tell people a little bit about your background? Because I know it's an interesting one because you've been all over. You've done a lot of different things. So why don't you kind of tell people why you're here tonight and how you got to this point? You know what I mean?
Sure thing, no problem. Yes, I was born at a very young age. I grew up in Wisconsin, which is just in our neck of the woods area, and grew up there. And then when I went to college in the cities, and I traveled all over the world. Actually, been on 6 continents, 21 countries. Lived in Asia for 10 years, and have touched the world's largest lizard, which is a Komodo dragon.
Jeez.
Yeah, I shouldn't have done it, but I did.
Aren't they deadly?
They are. Yeah, if they bite you, you need medical attention pretty much right away.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, because they have natural saliva that's mixed with their own poisonous juices.
What were you doing in Asia for 10 years, if I can ask?
I was doing many things. I was teaching English.
Vacation for 10 years.
Teaching English, being a missionary, earning a couple master's degrees.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and then traveling. I have some incredibly interesting stories from my travels.
Let's hear at least one of them.
All right.
Pick one of your favorite ones at least. We got to hear something.
Well, when I was in Indonesia, we got to be there at a time when their money wasn't so good. So it was like 8,000 of their monies, which was the rupee, to our dollar. So we were living like kings.
Oh my
and
gosh.
queens, because my wife was there. So we got to rent this van who took us all over Bali, and cost us $12 for the whole day.
Wow, that's crazy.
That's crazy.
And we took all over the place, and
That's
I got to hold a 13-foot Burmese python.
Oh my gosh.
And almost walk my face into this huge spider. Watch an accident happen on the road from a motorcycler, because I have lots of motorcycles.
Oh yeah.
And just almost get robbed. Go to cool temples. Get an ancient, almost 200-year-old bottle that I bought for my dad and sent it off to him. And my wife almost got stung by a semi-lethal snake on the rice paddies.
Jeez.
It went right between her feet and actually went over her back foot as she was swinging it forward. Yeah, I mean, lots of really interesting things. We rented this one place, no joke, for $3 a night.
Really?
Yeah, it was a bed and breakfast.
Oh my gosh.
So we got this really cool shanty, and we had big geckos 7, 8, 9 inches long floating around our ceiling. And in the morning we had breakfast served at our place, our little chalet, and $3. We were thinking, we could shell out $3.
Yeah, you could live there for the rest of your life. It wouldn't be too expensive.
Renting a place
Yeah. Now, is it still like that, or is it?
Yes, it's
it
worse.
is. Oh my, it's worse.
Yes, it is worse.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So you were traveling around. What was your main inspiration to kind of travel around? Because not everyone just gets up and wants to move to Asia for 10 years.
I'm pretty much as close as you're going to find to fearless. I fear nothing but God Himself. So I have no fear of people. I don't fear any place I'm supposed to be. I'm wise. I'm not going to waltz into Iran and just wander through the hills and wait till they pick me up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't have any fear of traveling, flying, nothing. It's all good for me.
So you just decided one day, I'm going to Asia. I'm going to go travel around. And where does someone get all the money to do something like this?
Slowly.
Did you save up a bunch of money? You worked before, and then you decided. And then when you got to those countries, did you just have enough money saved up to where it was really? Wow.
Do some research before you go. Just jump on and if you were willing to sacrifice some smallish pleasures for the larger pleasure, anything's possible.
Wow.
Well, I got to ask then, because you mentioned your wife was with you. So did you meet her before all these travels, they took place? Was she okay with the travel? Because some people, they're kind of homebodies, like to be comfortable where they're at. Was she okay with that? She must have been if she went with you, or is it kind of something you had to convince her to do?
Yes and no.
Yes and no. I'm the action adventurer who drags her from her comfort zone.
No choice.
But she had already gone overseas before.
Okay.
So, I pretty much set the itinerary, and we're heading off to Massachusetts this summer, and just lots of adventures all the time. So
that's crazy. You got to get a YouTube channel or something, Sherman. You got to document all this stuff.
I've thought about that.
Are you? I'm hoping that you're at least writing down stories and stuff. So someday you could at least write a book or something about that.
Sure.
I hope. I hope so. I'd buy the book.
I need to. I've written down some stuff. Some stuff is cataloged by pictures. And
take a lot of pictures.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I have a lot of evidence.
Well, and you said you have a couple degrees too. What are your degrees in? To kind of give people a background of what.
I have a Master of Theology degree, which is a shorter 36 credit thing. I have a Master of Divinity degree, which is 96 credits, and I have 3 years of postgrad, doctoral level studies behind me.
Wow.
So I've done some. They allow me one mistake per 10 pages.
Really?
And they don't want you to have a mistake, but they allow that. Yeah.
One mistake.
A comma, a spelled word.
That's crazy. Well, and now you're living in Wyndham,
Yep.
and your main job, you're a pastor, right? Is that your main? Would you call that your main job at least?
Sure,
but you do a number of other things. You kind of want to tell people some of your other things
Sure.
that you're involved with.
Sure. I'm kind of the angel of death. I'm the hospice chaplain here in town, so when they see me, they know it's getting close anyways. So I get to meet people at their finest hour, really.
Yeah.
I do that. I substitute teach.
Yeah.
I've been teacher at various times, for good or ill. And of course, I do other things, like I teach adult basic education in the same building that we're in. And, I'm on city council. I'm the councilman at large. Acting mayor sometimes. I've been mayor of Wyndham a number of times.
Oh.
Just for short periods.
And your most current thing that you've been doing, you've kind of been keeping me updated with it, but your most current little adventure, if you want to call it, is to run for the House of Representatives?
Yes.
Is that right?
U.S., Washington, D.C. Yeah, I was running for U.S. Congress, and I'm still technically in if one of 3 things happens by law. So the other guy's in at the moment, heading towards the primaries, but there may be an August surprise.
Ooh.
There will be an October surprise, I promise you. But
An
the
October surprise.
The August surprise hopefully happens.
Ah, well, awesome. And that's part of the reason why you're going to Duluth is to meet Trump and to try to get some kind of support riled up, or is that kind of what you're thinking?
That's part of the thing, yep, absolutely.
Wow, that's cool. So there's kind of a little background on Sherman. I totally forgot that. So Kyle, thank you for. I was in the beginning when I'm like, we gotta before we do anything. I should have said before we do anything, let's meet the guest. But I'm like, Action Park. I'm so excited to watch the video. So why don't we get into that now? Before you start, Adult, a little bit of a background. Like I said, I was watching this trailer, and I'm like, this is a crazy story. And then to come to realize that it's actually based off of a true real life event, an amusement park that a guy designed by himself before there were regulations, where numerous people were killed at this amusement park. This is some guy's crazy idea. So let's watch this little documentary here, and we'll kind of get the opinions afterwards.
New and improved and open once again.
Fantastic. Anna Gilligan is there this morning. Hello, Anna.
Hi, guys. Yeah, I think you're seeing some guys jump off the Tarzan jump here at Action Park. It's been closed since 1996. They reopened it on June 14th. I'm here with the owner, Andrew Mulhaville. He's also the son of the man who founded it. Thanks for being here.
It's great to be here. Thanks for coming out. What a day we have. It's beautiful here at Action Park.
So I got to ask you, because Action Park got a bit of a reputation. Some people got injured.
That was 30 years ago. The world has changed. I mean, when my dad started the park, he was the guy inventing the rides and bringing inventors in. Now it's highly regulated. Everything's engineered.
I love Action Park because it's so beautiful.
There's nothing in the world like Action Park.
The park was revolutionary. Not only was it one of the first water parks of its kind in the United States, but it also marketed itself as the biggest. It was eventually home to 75 rides, 40 of which were water slides. Action Park was split into 3 themed lands. The first was... Motorworld consisted of 3 types of attractions: land, water, and air rides. On land was the popular battle action tanks. For an additional fee, guests could ride inside tanks equipped with tennis ball cannons. The super go-karts were driven on a small loop. The karts themselves were designed to max out at 20 miles per hour, but the employees found that sticking a tennis ball in the governor device allowed the kart to go as fast as possible, with the new maximum speed being around 50 miles an hour.
50 miles an hour they got the go-karts up to. But just to remember that all of this stuff this guy designed, none of this is like professional amusement park equipment, all like the tanks and the go-karts and everything you're about to see, this guy just like made in his garage or whatever, put out here in this amusement park and let thousands and thousands of kids come ride it. And that's what you're about to see here. Keep it going, Dalton.
Head-on collisions frequently sent guests to the hospital, and the fumes from the engines overwhelmed riders at times. The Lolo cars were mini open cockpit race cars driven on a longer track, and they cost an additional charge to ride. Their maximum speed could also be tampered with by park employees. The super speedboats were driven in a small circle around an island in a pond that also had a large population of snakes in it. The guests would often attempt to bump nearby boats, as if they were on Motorworld's other water attraction, bumper boats. These were boats placed in a small pool and were designed to withstand guests crashing into one another. The second air ride was another upcharge attraction, Slingshot, which was also fairly safe. This ride was a common amusement park and carnival ride, in which guests were shot up on 2 bungee cords and flipped upside down as they flew through the air. Moreover, where are the water slides? This section put the action in Action Park. Waterworld had it all. It was home to the tidal wave pool, a 100 feet by 200 feet pool that could hold anywhere between 500 and 1,000 people. The pool's floor was slanted, and the further a guest went in it, the deeper it got. Waves went 20 minutes on, 10 minutes off, and they could reach a height of over 3 feet. This was challenging for swimmers of all skill levels, as the pool was hard to read and the fresh water was more difficult to swim in than salt water. A dozen lifeguards were on duty at the pool, and they would have to save around 30 people on a busy day. The Tarzan swing was a heavily advertised attraction in which guests would swing on a 20-foot cable over a pool. This spring-fed pool was so cool that lifeguards would have to rescue guests that could not swim after the shock of the cold water. The diving cliffs had 2 jumping bases. one 23 feet and the other 18 feet tall, with the pool below being 16 feet. The pool was also for non-jumpers, some of which were unaware of the cliffs, which resulted in collisions. A similar ride, the Roarin' Rapids, allowed guests to ride in a 1 or 2 person raft down a similar river. The Surf Hill had riders slide down a multi-laned, multi-hill slide on a mat. Riders could easily cross over to the adjacent lanes and cause collisions. And the 7th hill, nicknamed the Backbreaker, had an additional hump that would send riders flying, resulting but there's one in particular that has yet to be mentioned. This is the attraction that made Action Park the most infamous, the Cannonball Loop.
Look at this.
A tubed water slide with a vertical loop, similar to that of a roller coaster. It was rumored that during the testing of the attraction, Mulvihill offered $100 to employees who were willing to try it. Test dummies apparently came out of the loop without their heads. When it was open, guests would be weighed, hosed down, and given a set of instructions to decrease the possibility of injury. A hatch was added to the top of the loop to assist stuck riders that could not make it all the way through the slide. Many guests that completed the loop would come out at the bottom, suffering from bloody noses or other injuries, either from hitting the top of the loop or the impact on the way down. The Cannonball Loop was indicative of a larger issue with Action Park, as many of the other attractions were poorly crafted by designers that were less than engineers, and most were designed to minimize cost rather than maximize safety. The rides became even more dangerous when paired with the fact that the park sold alcohol at many of the convenience stands, often to minors.
And this is crazy. This park got shut down in '96 or something, I believe, because there was the rest of this video, for anyone who's watching, can go check this out on Defunct Land on YouTube. It's like a 20-minute video. They go over the entire history. The next part of the video is when they start talking about all the deaths that happened. Between 1986 and 1996, there's like 30 kids that die. Yeah. Every year they go 2 more died here, 1 more died here, 2, 3, 4, and they kept open. Because back in the day, New Jersey didn't have any regulations for amusement parks or theme parks. So they just, if someone died, it was their own fault. It wasn't the amusement park.
So no one could sue them or anything?
No one sued, amazingly, until I think it was 96 when regulations started getting heavy. That's when they came in and shut the place down. So it was closed for 10 years, I think, and then they reopened. Or no, it was closed for more than that. It was closed. They reopened in 2014. And
is it nothing like it was then?
Did you see the beginning? Those the rope swings are still there, but I don't think they. And the other thing is that upside down slide that got shut down before the whole park got shut down because so many people were getting hurt on it. But the other funny part is they bought ambulances for the town because they needed so many. The ambulances were coming over there so many times a day. They had to buy new ambulances for that town just because they were using the ambulances at this theme park so much. But it is reopened now. You can visit it. And you can actually, I think you can ride that upside down slide. They have a new thing. You have to actually ride in a cart.
What about the boats?
I don't know if you can use, I don't know about any of that.
That's the thing though,
the water bumper.
Obviously a lot of people died, but if you think about it, how much, I feel like in my case, I feel like I would have a lot of fun there.
Oh, yeah.
So
when
much
things
fun.
are less regulated, like the go-karts going okay, probably not 50 miles per hour. It's not a good idea, but you go to some rides these days, it's
oh yeah, it's so regulated, and that's the thing. When they reopened, it reopened in 2014 as Action Park, but then it had such a negative connotation, people weren't coming, that it changed the name to, I don't know if it's Action Mountain or something like that. But now that's the current name, and that's what people are coming to. So you can still visit. I don't know how many of the original rides are there, but that guy that was in the beginning of the video, that's the guy who created all that stuff. His son.
Oh, really?
Yep, his son. So he's running it. And I thought that was cool that it's all based on a real story.
Yes.
And
I need to remind you guys that safety is #1 only in America.
Really?
Overseas, they think about things so totally different. They still have personal responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
It's your own dumb fault for going on the ride. That type of responsibility.
Yeah.
It's not glorifying the death of the 30.
No.
But still, responsibility.
Yeah. And a lot of those were, a lot of the deaths were from people drowning in the wave pool. But that just might be, people don't know how to swim or whatever. And if they can't handle waves, probably don't send them in there,
And the go-karts and stuff, they still have that around here. I used to race go-karts, and they have shifter carts. The only difference is you probably wear a helmet nowadays.
Yeah. And then the later part of the video, they start talking about how the employees would get drunk and do dumb stuff and let too many people on a ride, or let too many put the tennis balls in the governors or whatever, so that they can go 50.
Awesome. That is awesome.
But then in the other part, they were talking about how they take those down the highway. They would drive them out of the park and take them down the highway.
That's not a good idea.
Definitely check.
I think it's a great idea.
Definitely, Tylan, I think you especially would like to watch this entire documentary.
Oh, I will.
It's a short documentary, and they talk about a lot of stuff. But I thought it was really cool, and I really want to see the movie now because they They don't. You could definitely tell it's based off of it, but it looks like a funny movie, and all of the stunts that they do in the movie are real. So they include the original like Jackass whole thing that he does all of his Johnny Knoxville does all of his own stunts. Yeah. So he goes down the slide or whatever, flies off, and it's actually, they combine the two elements. So I got to check the movie out, and I thought that was interesting.
I can relate to that pretty well.
Fun stuff. This is definitely Tylan's thing. Oh, yeah. So I had to bring that up, but that's not the main topic. I know that when I talked to Sherman, he gave me a couple things that you wanted to talk about, but the thing that kind of caught my interest was the ancient, what do you call it? Ancient
megalithic structures.
Yeah, and stuff like that. So you kind of want to get us going with that, and what are your thoughts on some of this old time, really way back technology?
Well, perhaps way back. We don't really know. That's a subjective opinion right there. So megalithic structures are essentially things we continue to unearth and just take a deeper look at all around the planet, actually. They are super crazy big things that people built that the conventional theories, the ones you see in your textbooks, for instance, don't really handle at all.
They can't explain it.
Gloss over, they can't explain it. It doesn't fit into their subjective opinion, which is tied into we went from dumb to smart. That's the evolutionary thing, and I completely reject that. I think that's hogwash.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's all over the planet.
Yeah, so there's a giant, it's like architectural digs that are finding these Mayan temples or the pyramids or whatever it may be, stuff that's so crazy. And when I was doing my research on it, I'm finding this stuff, and you're wondering how did humans move these 2,000-ton, these giant blocks and stack them and move them like hundreds of feet in the air. Yeah, and it's crazy stuff like that you kind of wonder, where did this all come from? And is that kind of fitting your theory that it can't go from dumb to smart? There had to have been people have just been smart since the beginning, or where does that kind of fit in? What do you think with that?
I think we're getting dumber.
Really. Dumber.
Yeah, I really do. We need computers now to keep track of stuff. Why couldn't they do it just in their head? The high level of mathematical precision is stunning.
Yes.
There's one particular statue in Egypt where both sides of the face are identical to the millimeter, and the curving of the cheeks and completely symmetrical, so that there is not even a flaw, and not even when you look really close on the stones, no abrasion marks. Certainly they weren't taking a pounder stone and a copper chisel and going on the face. There's no way they could duplicate that.
How did they do it then?
Well, some people, we don't have any direct proof, and at least not much, believe that there are machines that we have not yet discovered that are actually the basis of what they did.
Really?
We found stones with deep cuts from a rotary type blade, and it goes down many inches into very hard stone.
Really?
Yeah, even up to 5, 6, 7 point stones, where the hardness scale goes up to 10, right?
Yep.
And of course, 7, 8 is extremely hard, but we still see cut marks.
That's unbelievable. Well, how I'm trying to wrap my head around something like that. I mean, especially when you look at the pyramids. I don't remember what they called it, but the exterior white brick or whatever, it was the most fine type of granite, and they said that it would require extremely nice tools nowadays, but they did it back then, and there's no flaws, like you said. How could something like that have been done back then, like hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago?
Quite easily.
Really?
Theories are wrong.
I don't think they used any machines or anything, though.
How'd they do it?
Well, where's the proof of the machines, though, is the real question.
The proof is that the actual stones themselves, where we find perfectly drilled holes that are not irregular at all. It's as if you took an actual drill, went with a drill bit, and went straight into the wood, came back out. That's what the stone looks like. And these are in many countries. So the evidence of a machine, of the need for a machine, I guess, is the better way to put it.
So there's no possible way that anyone could ever do it without a machine.
Correct, because of the high speed necessary to get it straight. People could take a hand cranked type drill. We have the old style.
Right.
But you would have to go so fast to be humanly impossible. Yeah.
I don't know.
So that's I'm not saying that everyone agrees.
I don't think I can believe it until I see the machine that they use, because I don't believe back in the day that there was any machines or anything. I think
I think we gotta determine.
Before us, I don't, not us, but like
modern civilization
with machines and factories, cameras, computers, and all that. I don't believe that anything like that was ever before.
Well, I think we need to determine what we're talking about when we mean machine. You don't mean electronic, do you?
Well, not necessarily. Not necessarily. There is some proof for electricity, even way back then, used to illuminate, even when they're doing their chiseling in their caves and stuff. But that's another issue. You're right. We haven't. I don't mean like the necessarily machines that look like the machines we have now, but things that operate on the same premise. Meaning, you can use solar power or wind power, or you can use water power, and those machines look quite distinct, don't they? With the big turbines, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you could use water power with that little wheel thing that spins around that powered the boats, that powered the sawmills, and that looks different than what we have nowadays too when we use hydroelectric power. So we're not talking exactly the same look.
No,
but we found like the Antikythera.
Yep.
You're talking about. That is an actual geared, highly sophisticated machine that we know is at least 2,000 years old. We found that.
That is crazy. Yeah.
That is crazy.
And they couldn't explain that for hundreds of years. They had no idea what it was until they could actually x-ray it. And we'll watch that in the second part. That'll kind of back up what you're talking about. But you're thinking it was maybe more water powered to get these things going fast enough?
Some. Yep, absolutely.
Would it be animals? I'm just trying to figure out stuff that could
no problem. Because of the theory from dumb to smart is kind of completely opposite of the smart to dumb theory. A lot of people don't realize that the incredible mathematical precision that they needed to accomplish these statues, which we can see, and these huge blocks of stones like in Baalbek, Lebanon, 1,200 tons, and they moved it. And these other stones, 800 tons that they used in Solomon's temple, that they lifted some 10, 12 feet and placed with precision on top of smaller stones. It was done. And they have determined at different places where the stones are so large, they would require so many people, there wasn't even space for even a tenth of the people to pull up this supposed boulder that they moved with a bunch of levers and manpower. It's just not possible. On the numbers game. There is a stone so large in Peru that no truck alive in the world can lift it on its own.
But they lifted it.
They moved it some 7 miles.
How in the heck did this happen?
Well,
what's your theory behind it?
My theory is that they were employing sound / water and electricity in ways, and the electromagnetic field of the earth. They were employing the combination of these elements in a way that we're not familiar with nowadays. We've lost technology. Let's face it. Do you guys know how to weave a basket? Have you done any baskets lately?
You've been basket weaving, Tylan?
I could probably just buy that one from the store.
Yeah, exactly. But I bet you not even 1% of Americans know how to actually weave a basket.
No. Why would you do it when you can buy it from a store, though?
Correct. That's my point.
He's just saying
they've made stuff that they couldn't make back in the day to make that basket, though.
That's absolutely true too.
You know what I mean?
Technology, yeah.
So it goes back and forth there.
It does. There is some other theory from Peru that the people were actually communicating with tribes that were 10 to 100 miles away via this tall pyramid with these special stones and special acoustics. We're actually sending messages many miles away, not just by yelling, but by communicating in some way.
Wow.
The pyramids, did you realize, I don't know if you know the numbers, the Great Pyramid has about 2 million blocks of stone.
Yeah, and we'll check that video out too, and where they kind of talk about how they think they made it. There's no proof, there's no evidence, there's nothing.
But we know the stones are there because we can see them.
Yep.
And even if they made it in 20 years, they would have to lay a brand new stone every, I think it's 29 seconds. Really? Of every day for 20 years just to get them actually laid in place.
Wow.
Not to mention the precision.
Yeah. Right. Well, we'll continue talking about this after this short break here. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome Welcome back to the Ethan Clare podcast show. We have Jayesun Sherman on here, and we've been talking about a variety of things from Action Park to megalithic structures, and it's kind of a random switch, but that's how it works around here at the Ethan Clare show. So let's continue talking about these structures and stuff. I know before we left, we were talking about like taking these giant blocks out of the ground and other stuff, and you were kind of talking about using technology that people nowadays might not have discovered yet. Is that kind of where you're going with that, like electromagnetics and solar, hydro,
wind, water?
Now, how something that you said that interested me. How maybe back then, how did they use solar power to power things?
Well, they had a knowledge of glass. They had a knowledge of vision. We don't know because we haven't found it yet, but we could envision them using solar power through mirrors, because they did have mirrors back then. They look a little different than ours, of course.
Yeah.
And we are imagining exactly how they could achieve these goals that we can see tangibly. That's the point. We have the tangible stuff there, but they could have done what some ancient people were in the practice of doing. When they created a work of art, they destroyed the things that they used to make the work of art. Like the Taj Mahal. You heard about that?
No.
That the guy who commissioned it, the ruler, he chopped off the right hands of all the architects and all the guys who had the knowledge, so that it could never again be repeated.
Really?
So they could never reduplicate the beauty of the Taj Mahal.
So interesting.
That's a true story as far as I'm aware.
Leads me to my question, because it's like, why? I mean, that kind of goes along with your talk of why isn't there more like either documentation of it, or like you could see like kind of the progression of the machines they made. Like, why didn't the people after them kind of use it or build off it? It seems like it went, if it was that great, and then it just kind of like turned, and now it's like just basic stuff with like levers and stuff and wheels. Like, oh, we invented the wheel. I feel like they would have something way more complicated, and they would build off that leading up to where we are now. But it just seems like it went from super cool to, we invented the wheel to move stuff, and now we're in computer. Like, where's the disconnect? You know?
I think the disconnect is here. It depends on your worldview, because your worldview has everything to do with it. If you believe that evolution is true, we have a uniformitarianism, that everything just went from dumb to smart, then you're really left without an explanation. But if you believe in catastrophism, which many scientists do believe in, probably at least 20% of them are advocates of that. We're talking about people with terminal degrees, not like they're going to die, but doctoral degrees.
Yeah.
So they believe in that. You would say that they had technology that was wiped out, and we would call that in Christian parlance the flood.
Okay.
We went from perhaps 1 billion people, several million had a high level of skill in a certain area, and they were wiped out, and we went down to 8 people, and then they of course had to build everything back up.
Yeah,
and there's some proof for that in archaeology as well. So.
And that was one of the other things you talked about, which I didn't ask you about, but you talked about Noah's Ark, and what was that all about? Because you just kind of briefly mentioned it, but I never got into it with you.
Yes.
So what's kind of the theory behind that?
Sure. In fact, it just hit the news again recently.
Oh, really?
There's of course, you know about Mount Ararat. It's a pretty well-known mountain near Armenia. It's in the country of Turkey on the eastern side. And that mountain is where everyone's been looking for Noah's Ark for years, and they cite some little pieces of wood, and they keep thinking, okay. But there's another mountain about 25 miles southwest of Ararat called Lesser Ararat. And on that site, someone was flying in a plane back in the 1960s, and he took pictures, he's doing surveillance for the government, and he got the pictures back, and he noticed a boat-shaped structure from 10,000 feet up.
Really?
So they went down, checked it out. And from that point on, people have been researching, and it turns out that it is indeed what many people believe is Noah's Ark.
Really?
It's the right dimensions. They find special laminated wood with metal rivets. They found coprolite, which is poop from an animal.
Is there pictures of this online?
Absolutely.
Dalton, you should try to find that quick if you can.
And there's even a visitor's site that was built by the government of Turkey, who officially recognize it as Noah's site, and they even have a sign saying Noah's boat. Nehum Gemisi, I think is in Turkish. I have a friend of a friend who's been there.
Oh, really?
And I definitely want to go there.
Yeah.
But the point is that if this is true, we have a very valid explanation as to why the technology would suddenly be there, then off. What about Atlantis? The proof from Atlantis comes from Homer, who wrote about 900 BC. Some people think it's myth, some people think it's historic, or somewhere in between. But the place known as Atlantis, we found many buried cities, many cities under the water that they're continuously finding, and quite extensive off the coast of Japan, in the Mediterranean, off the coast of the Atlantic Ocean, over towards Europe. These things are not just occasional. This is not anything to do with all the wrecks that we find from boats all over the world.
Oh, yeah.
It's numbered in the thousands.
So you're saying that kind of backs up the Great Flood?
It really does, because it redid the property lines.
Yeah.
If you will.
Yeah, well, why don't we check out the video of the pyramids? That'll be a good kind of startup to get back into that conversation. And I found this video, it kind of just talks about how they think they built them. And it kind of gives some recreations and whatever. And you kind of get your opinion on that, too.
Sure.
If you want to pause at any point, we can do
angle
that.
of slightly less than 52 degrees, rising to a summit of 480 feet. But how did they manage to maneuver 2.5-ton blocks to such an incredible height without the crane or the block and tackle? It was a challenge to the ancient Egyptians, and still remains a mystery to modern archaeologists. Egyptologist Mark Lehner has spent 30 years studying the pyramids hands-on.
My approach to the question was, where are the quarries? What kind of a ramp can you get from the quarry to the pyramid in a functional slope?
Lehner and almost all Egyptologists believe that some kind of ramp was used to raise the stone blocks. The type of ramp remains a mystery. Did they approach the pyramid straight on? Zigzag up one side? Or spiral around it?
It's not a problem that's been totally solved, and I've given my suggestions. I've tried to base them in the landscape, but a lot of it is still inference.
Because the ramps were dismantled once the pyramid was complete, only fragments of evidence are available to archaeologists. But it was ramps and sheer muscle power that allowed millions of blocks to reach the summit. Once in position, the builders faced a new task. The blocks had to be fitted together. Surprisingly, in such a precise build, a large proportion of the internal stones were just roughly finished. The gaps between them were filled with rubble and gypsum mortar.
In between the blocks were stuffed lots of limestone chippings mixed with a huge dollops of mortar. And it sets just like modern concrete.
But every stone that would be visible when the build was completed was placed with amazing precision. In the Great Pyramid, the blocks of the burial chamber fit precisely.
Look at that credit card. Unbelievable.
The sides of these blocks had to be almost perfectly flat to make these astonishing joins. This precision engineering was achieved using the most rudimentary of tools.
Yes, we'll use this rods and string tool in order to find out whether the surface is truly flat. And by using a third rod, which is the same length as the other two rods joined by the string, which is now pulled very taut, we can see if it just slips under. Now, we've got a bit of a high spot there. Now, in ancient times, they would mark that simply by putting some red ochre on, just to remind the workers where to go to, and check along the length of the string.
The ancient mason would use the rods and string to spot imperfections, and then mark them with red ochre to show where more work was needed.
Using two further tools, this one being a flint scraper and this one being a sandstone rubber, now we can use the marks as a guide to scrape away the high point like so. And it's obvious that as you scrape, the mark disappears, and with it, of course, the high spot.
This same technique was also used in the final stage of construction. The rough internal blocks were covered with an outer casing of perfectly smooth stone. This was carved from the highest grade limestone and had to be carried across the Nile to the pyramid site. With this polished casing, the pyramid would have shone dazzling white in the Egyptian sun.
But when the pyramids were newly encased in this special limestone They must have been blinding in the sun like newly fallen snow.
You could pause it, Dalton. So that's kind of a video talking about the whole construction of the pyramids. There's a lot of stuff in there, obviously, to break down. I noticed you took a couple notes, Sherman. What are your thoughts kind of on the whole insight that they offered about it?
Oh, you can say without any guesswork, they are extremely biased towards an evolutionary worldview.
Really?
And the Egyptians were extremely religious. Everything they did was about religion, about the afterlife, about gaining power and all that stuff. They had many, many gods that they served. And I noticed stuff he said rudimentary and sheer muscle power, and the ramps were dismantled. The Egyptians were way too smart to have used ramps. It would have been an enormous task just to build a ramp that could actually be functional enough to drag these super heavy blocks up. I mean, 2.5 tons is quite heavy.
Yeah.
It's 5,000 pounds.
Yeah.
5,000 pounds.
Yeah, that's a lot, yeah.
I've seen people try to recreate these things and move the 5,000 pound blocks, and they struggle to get any real momentum and any distance. And they were moving these things a long ways.
Oh, yeah.
A long way, so yeah.
So what I mean, that kind of goes on to say then, how do you think they got the blocks up to the top? Because these things...
Get a horse up there, it's going to pull it right up.
A horse?
Well, back in the day, they got dinosaurs hauling them things up.
Perhaps, yeah. Dinosaurs were around, yeah.
Oh. So are you, this is another thing that people get into, is did humans and dinosaurs live at the same time?
They have always lived at the same time. And there is actually archaeological proof, historical proof, tangible proof you can actually talk about and see. One is called the Ica stones, ICA, from Peru. They have scenes from everyday life that were put in the burial places where they died. And on them they have depictions of everything from the nasty to technology for looking at stars, fish, kangaroos, and dinosaurs.
Really?
And these stones are around 700 or so years old, long before we ever put the bones together for museums. Because we've only been doing that for about 250, 300 years.
Why do scientists say then that dinosaurs and humans didn't exist together? Are they ignoring?
They have to.
Yeah.
Otherwise their theory falls apart.
There's people who, there's people who definitely don't agree with that. Why?
Absolutely.
What is their basis for not thinking that they could have existed at the same time?
Well, ultimately, the age of the Earth has been increasing, according to scientists, since the 1840s. And it used to be 30,000 years old, went up to 80,000 years old. By the time we got up to 1900, is up to about 1 billion years old. And now, of course, since 1940s, 4.6 billion years old. It's been aging quite extensively.
Yeah, I guess so.
So, but that's one thing. If you have a naturalistic explanation, you can actually confirm your own bias. It's called confirmational bias. Tendency, where we look for stuff that seems to back up our own theory. And so with evolution is no need for God. You can dispense with God, and when you dispense with God, you dispense with morality. And no, I don't think they're consciously thinking of this chain, but that is where it actually leads. They want some explanation that they can be in charge of and say definitively that our universe is 20 billion years old or whatever that is nowadays.
Well, he's got some pictures here of the Ica stones that you were talking about. And
let's look at a couple of them. Look at that one over there. A few more right there.
And what are these stones about again?
These are stones that were placed in burial places where they died and they buried them with these traditional burial stones. And some people have forged these since, but we found 11,000 plus that were not forged, that were actually historical. And nowadays some of the locals are trying to recreate that.
Yeah, keep going down,
they carved them of what
they carved them, from what they saw, obviously. They have scenes of everyday life. Some of them are not nice and appropriate for any audience, and some of them are very appropriate. I have a friend who has an Ica stone himself.
Really?
Yes, I saw it myself just a couple inches away.
Wow, it's hard to figure out which ones are real, which ones are fake.
I know. There is a way that they can figure out, though. It's called patina. Patina is that thing when you carve something hundreds of years ago versus just yesterday, there is a lack of elements in the actual carving edges and the lines. And so they have determined that most of the Ica stones that have been found are genuine.
Wow.
They are ancient. They are hundreds of years old. And there's just debate on how they could have done that if dinosaurs never lived with people. See, that's an assumption.
Huh.
That's an assumption, just like the guy said there.
What you're saying is kind of like how you can see a fresh footprint and one that's a little bit older.
Yes.
Is what you're saying.
You can tell,
like, you know, like if a deer's walked by you within 24 hours between.
Something like that, yep, absolutely.
So then to kind of go back to that, do you think that there might have been, this is a crazy theory, but that there might have been some kind of link between dinosaurs and building the pyramids?
It could have been. I don't think that they would have had to use dinosaurs or plenty of other animals too, elephants and stuff. I don't think they really used elephants or other animals like that. In my opinion, there's a French guy, I forget his name, I think his first name is Jean, which would make sense. But he developed this theory where they actually didn't build any ramps. They started off on the base. They kind of leveled it out and got it all fixed and prepped. And then they started placing the stones. And then as they went along, they actually had a tunnel inside the outer wall. And they came and they kept on going up and up and up, and as they got to the top, they put the capstone on, they started backing back down, and they already had the outward casing stones on by this point, and then they backed out of the pyramid, sealed it up, and for time and eternity. Because there were no maps as to the entrance.
No, so. But how? I'm just curious as to how you think they got these 2 ton or however 2.5 ton blocks.
Oh yeah,
up that high.
Oh, absolutely. Technology, we have determined, NASA has done experiments, I've seen them, where they use sound waves, and they have actually lifted pebbles off the ground and made them levitate in midair.
Really?
Based on sound. Electromagnetism, could actually be well explained too. There's a guy who lives in America who himself, I saw him on TV, news station did it. He moved a 20,000 pound stone by himself, using levers and weights and stuff and moving them around, and then he put the 20,000 pound stone upright from a horizontal position. I saw it on television. His whole family was there. The news was there. Cameras were rolling.
Wow.
There's a lot of stuff just because you haven't seen it yet. I've actually touched some megalithic structures in Saipan. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
How did these locals from an island move these 10,000 to 20,000 pound stones and then put another stone right on top of it in the shape of a bowl called Taga stones? Taga stones. I've seen them, touched them, went around them, tried to push them over. Impossible.
You think cranes? Could that have been something that would have been used back then?
No. Cranes are incredibly difficult. The time involved to build them, the weight that they're bearing, right, and sinking down into the ground.
Yeah.
There are lots of issues there. So
because I know they mentioned cranes. I didn't know what you thought about that.
Oh, absolutely. They mentioned because they're going with the rudimentary. They're ugh. They barely know how to speak. They're trying to keep each other from fighting and killing each other.
Yeah.
That's bogus. We actually found evidence of teams of Egyptians competing against each other for speed and getting things built.
Really?
And the actual evidence we find for ovens and dwelling places is not the conventional theories of hundreds of thousands of slaves. These were people perhaps even being paid.
Really?
And like I said, teams, and they were not super large. Like 10,000, 20,000, somewhere on there.
Wow.
We're guessing on the numbers, of course.
Yeah. Well, we could check out that other video too, the Antikythera. That is the most interesting thing that I could find about this whole thing, that scientists really haven't been able to explain how did someone come up with this. And that really disproves the theory that they went from dumb to smart with something this advanced. So we'll check this video out, Dalton. And we don't have to watch the whole thing. It's 14 minutes. You can kind of skip in a little bit here.
1902. An archaeologist was diving off the coast of the Greek island of this highly corroded bronze relic.
Pause it quick, Dalton. So pretty much this diver, they discovered in this ship, a very old ship, they found this weird looking, it's a very weird, for people who are listening, very weird looking, stone looking thing, and it has an X on it. And they'll talk about what they do, but that's just to give you a little background here. We skipped into it a little bit.
It's the Antikythera mechanism, named after where it was found. But beyond that, it is shrouded in mystery. What we do know is that it was constructed by an unknown Greek scientist over 2,100 years ago. The strange mechanical device is made up of numerous gears, switches, and mechanical oddities. Upon its discovery, scientists pulled their hair out, trying to deduce where it came from, who made it, how does it work, and what does it do. Scientists from all over the world examined the device for over 100 years. but nobody ever got remotely close to uncovering its secrets. And so, for the past 100 years, the Antikythera mechanism has sat on display at the National Museum of Archaeology in Athens, Greece, completely undisturbed, shrouded in mystery. Until recently. Over the past 20 years, using a whole array of modern technologies, we have been able to crack the code behind this unknown mechanism. A whole host of experts in the fields of engineering, archaeology, and various other sciences from multiple countries collaborated in an effort to painstakingly pick apart the device. But there was a problem. Being such a significant historic relic, the Antikythera mechanism couldn't literally be picked apart. So, to see beneath the surface, scientists had to use a highly specialised X-ray machine, which presented another problem. One of the only X-ray machines in the world capable of seeing inside this corroded bronze marvel was located in England. The relic itself is far too fragile to be moved outside of its Athens museum, so the extremely large and heavy X-ray machine had to be shipped all the way to Athens at a great expense, so that the relic could be safely imaged without moving it more than a few meters. But the details that they uncovered inside the device blew the minds of every antiquity historian out there, because the technology used inside it shouldn't have existed over 2,000 years ago when it was made. The complex clock-like device contains 37 gears of varying sizes, shapes, and teeth counts. Each cog is precisely manufactured to exacting standards and has a teeth count that correlates to a prime number. What you're looking at, ladies and gentlemen, is the world's very first computer. Over 2,000 years before the Apple I, and over 2,000 years before Alan Turing's bomb. It's incredible to think that this is an actual computer that can take an input and compute an output. That was invented and created in roughly 100 BC.
You could pause it, Dalton.
Over one.
So they're talking about this amazing device that, and you do see that the different levels of gears and everything.
Oh, yeah.
Just unbelievable that that was discovered and that humans created that. And then they're going to they end up talking about how they use it to track the movement of the sun, and there's like a built-in calendar so they can tell when the games are coming up and everything. Just using this turn on it, it can calculate this stuff. They came up with that, and it really makes you think. Kind of what you said, there's this technology that we haven't discovered yet, and then they're finding stuff like this, and it kind of makes you wonder what is really out there. You know what I mean? So I don't know. What are your thoughts kind of on something like this?
Well, some stats. Here's something you may not know. Of all the sites in the world that we can dig at, we talked about in Israel, only less than 10% have actually been dug at. But around the world, we have not even touched 8 to 9% of all the possible places to dig for stuff. So to say that we haven't found it, we haven't found any machines yet, so they probably don't exist, is an argument from silence, but it's also an argument from non-discovery, because this is not something that was on display with the ancients. It was on a boat, and they were using it, and it went down with the boat, and we found it in a shipwreck. So what other things are there? We found some other really bizarro things too, besides this.
Oh, yeah.
That's funny you mentioned with the boat, and like, we don't know what else is, and I don't know the exact percentage, but they said like, it's super high percentage of the ocean that hasn't been discovered, like searched or anything. It's super small, like what we actually know, and like there could be a whole like we don't know what else is out there, and they're discovering like new creatures that are down so deep, and like you just hard to get to, and like you never know like if there was another boat or something that went down, like what other technology, like you don't know. That's the thing. It's kind of crazy.
It's true. They even got on camera a megalodon not too long ago. They guesstimated at 65 feet long.
Yeah, I think they made a movie of that. I just saw a commercial, like an action movie about it. So.
It's cool stuff.
What was it? A megalodon? What is that?
It's a huge shark. Yeah.
Really?
They guesstimated based on the size and trajectory and the way it was swimming. It's about 65 feet long.
Holy smokes.
And the longest known great white is around 27 feet long, somewhere on there.
Holy cow. Like I was saying, it's kind of crazy that they're talking about these giant, like you're talking about structures and animals. That, and do you think, Sherman, this is just a theory, that maybe not all of the animals that we know now have been discovered, or have like that we don't know about all of them, that there could be species of animals and stuff that maybe could have helped with building certain things that haven't been discovered? Or do you think that we've discovered a majority of the species of animals that exist today?
Well, scientists will tell you, quite frankly, that we've discovered maybe 50% of everything in the ocean. And when we go down to 3,000 feet or lower, we discovered a new species about every 10 minutes.
Really?
And on land, they found new species of animals, like a new species of frog they found on a high up butte, as we would say, in a rainforest. And they found a new species of another marine type animal in a cave. They're finding stuff all the time. No, we have not discovered everything. Have we discovered all the big animals? Maybe. Maybe. There can't be too many big animals left because, they're big.
I guess that's more what I was saying. Like, there could have been some kind of animal that could have helped. I'm just trying to wrap my head around doing something like this, building something like this. I feel like there's got to be something big, something huge that could pull this stuff around. If it was an ox or like some kind of woolly mammal, I don't know exactly what it is, but woolly mammoth or whatever.
You know that woolly mammoths are elephants. They just have a little more hair.
Yeah,
right?
true.
Okay,
Yeah.
So the point is, I heard a line in there. He says shouldn't have existed.
Yep.
Based on his theory.
Yeah.
And there's this thing called out of place artifacts called ooparts. And it's a well-known technology that people like to study into. I call them well-placed artifacts because I expect to find high technology from the ancient past.
So you think there's more stuff like this?
Oh, absolutely.
Really?
The Bosnian pyramid. Have you heard of that?
No.
It's this huge, huge pyramid, which is actually ultimately bigger than the Great Pyramid.
Oh, my gosh.
And there are tunnels underneath that they're clearing out even as we speak in Bosnia. There are about 95 well-done pyramids in Egypt, but worldwide, somewhere around 100,000. We find pyramids. They represented mountains in the Hindu culture, the Mayan culture, all over the world.
And that's why they represent mountains? Is that why all these different cultures build these pyramids?
Yeah, because mountains were the top where you do religious ceremony.
And most of the time the pyramids are used for burying people. It's a sacred...
Maybe.
I thought that's what the Egyptians, they buried like pharaohs and stuff in there. Is that more like movie...
That's movie magic. That's revisionist history. We don't really know. In fact, the Great Pyramid, who we say Khufu built, it may not have been built by Khufu at all. It has an actual burial thing in there, but it may not have been used for any burial ever.
Really?
Yes. So based on dimensions and all other factors, there's no evidence that there was ever any treasure or any body in there. There are no hieroglyphic inscriptions inside lots of these pyramids.
The Great Pyramid, was that?
There's not much in there.
Really?
If anything, I don't recall any actual inscriptions inside. There's precision. And there's a 70-ton block of stone that's around the 200, 250-foot mark of the pyramid, about midway, maybe a little bit lower. And that's amazing. But, yeah, they haven't found that.
What's the point of putting the big block up there?
We have limited knowledge of what they thought about. They made everything about religion, mostly.
Yep.
It was not just about power like we have and money and stuff. It was about religion, and everything was touching that. And so we don't literally know, but we know that we are wrong on a lot of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
We find huge, huge burial caskets, if you will, with 10-ton stone caps, and it's laser spot on. Like less than a piece of paper off in thickness.
Well, and you saw they tried putting a credit card in between the blocks there, and how perfectly they connect right next to each other. I can't wrap my head around most of this stuff. It's crazy,
it's amazing.
And that's why scientists are trying to figure this stuff out. And every day it's going to keep getting better, and we're going to hopefully discover things that can lead to figure out where all this stuff came from and how it was built, because I'm interested in it, and I think there's a global community of people who are working every day. And like you said, a lot of this stuff isn't funded. And there's got to be more money going towards stuff so we can figure out past and where how we can figure more stuff out. I don't know where they get the money from. I don't know where they get the money from, but taxes or whatever it is. But figure more stuff out, I think, should be important. with this. But it's been a good conversation with you, Sherman, here tonight. And obviously we'll have to have you back because there's a lot of stuff we didn't even touch on. You know, we talked about literally pyramids and Action Park. But
we could go on for hours.
Oh yeah, you could talk about hours. I mean, you could go really in depth and pull up a lot more research and stuff and kind of dive into it and pick it apart. But it's been great to have you here and get your opinion on this stuff. And
Thanks.
I wish you luck tomorrow with Trump. That'll be interesting. Actually, this podcast will be on Thursday or Friday, so you'll have already met him, and so we're wishing you luck here from the past into the future.
Yes.
Hopefully it goes well, and get him on the podcast. That's all I gotta say.
I'll do my best.
Get him down here. Well, Sherman, thank you very much for coming on, and to everyone watching, we really appreciate this. Before we go, I need to announce the winner of the Wilder Demons hat here. Let's see who won. Moment of truth. Jordan Allen, the big winner. Hey. So for anyone that wants to get on the next drawing here for a prize, all you have to do is like, comment, share, subscribe, pretty much anything. Just share the podcast and we'll put your name in the drawing, enter to win some kind of prize. We've given away phone cases, we're giving away hats, we're giving away t-shirts, pretty much anything. So just get the podcast out there. We really appreciate everyone for tuning in every week, and I'm not sure who we'll have on next week, but I know it'll be somebody interesting, hopefully, with a good story to tell. And I just really appreciate everyone tuning in and watching. So thank you for watching, and we will see you next week.